You're listening to the Robert Elms Show on BBC Radio London, and today we're around my manor. Well, sort of. I think this is very interesting because I think, like many areas of London, we have this notion that London is a collection of villages, and I think there's some truth in that. Although they're bigger and more exciting and more important than most villages, I'll tell you. But even somewhere like Camden Town is a collection of different quarters. My Camden, or the bit I live in at least, and the bit that I sort of think of as my manor, is more the southern end of Camden Town. It's Mornington Crescent up to about Camden Town Tube. And there's a big divide because you go north of there and suddenly you're in the madness. Now, I love the madness. I think the madness is great. But I don't kind of get up there all that often unless I need to buy a T-shirt or a pair of Dr. Martens. Because it's a very different Camden to mine. I think our end is a bit more kind of scruffy and run down, but also less touristy and more local. Whereas the northern end, sort of north of the train station, the tube station, is very much dominated by the market and tourists and all of that, which is great. I'm not knocking it for a single moment. But I don't get up there all that often. I don't even really know what it's like now. But someone who does is on the line, because he's James O'Noonoin. He's the operations manager for Camden Market, and he's about to talk to us. Good morning to you, James. So first of all, give us a little kind of clue. How long have you been involved in the market and its operations?
I've been working at the market now for just coming up to 2 years.
Right.
But back in 2006 or so, I worked on a food stall there in the West Yard. And way back in the 90s, I worked on a T-shirt stall in the lock. And even way back before then, I used to work on a narrowboat opening the lock, which used to pass through the market.
So it's certainly an area that you've known for a very long time.
It is, yes.
Who goes to the market? I mean, clearly lots and lots and lots of people go to the market. I mean, it's hugely successful. But I have to say, and I have to be honest here, as a local, I don't venture there that often.
Actually, my past brother-in-law came down to the market to lend me some building equipment a few weeks back. And despite being from Camden himself, he remarked that he hadn't been down for a few years.
Right.
And he was looking around going, actually, there's some really nice stuff here. I said, yes, there is. Tell other people, please.
So, I mean, in what sense has it changed? Because I still think of the market. I mean, I have two visions. I have a much older vision of the market as a very sort of hippie stroke, almost punky, do-it-yourself type market, Red or Dead just starting out and all of that kind of stuff. And then I have a more recent vision, which is mainly young Spaniards all buying the same T-shirt.
I think it's both, because there are a lot of international visitors to the market, especially from other parts of Europe.
Yeah, it's incredibly popular, isn't it, with kids from Italy and Spain and France and wherever.
But it is London kids. I mean, I went to school in North London, and when I was supposed to be trying to do A-levels and stuff,
you were bunking off down the market.
Yes, I was spend the day mooching around Camden. But there is still a lot of that, and there's a lot of British visitors from the north of England or the West Country who make an annual sort of pilgrimage to the market. And, there is still a lot of hippies and a lot of DIY punk, and there's some more commercial stuff, and there's, lots of small businesses starting every day. When
we talk about the market, where do we mean? Because there's so many different markets, aren't there?
There is, yes. You've got sort of coming up from Camden Town Station, which is sort of where, for most people who aren't from Camden starts.
Yeah.
You've got Inverness Street, which used to be a fruit and veg market.
Yeah.
Up until quite recently, the little green market there on Union Street. Then the High Street itself, if you look online, most of the reviews of Camden Market are actually the High Street shops.
Right. Then
you've got the Lock and the Stables and Camden Lock Village, which is coming back in about a year's time, but is still under development. And then you've got a couple of little markets up towards Primrose Hill, but people don't tend to think of that as Camden.
There's been lots of talk that you use the D word and development, and there's been lots of talk and debate and consternation in some quarters about the development of Camden Market. What exactly is the situation concerning that? Well,
there's that large development over the road, which will become part of the market when it's finished.
Right.
But there's also been a lot of the site is ranging from sort of, a lot of the site was constructed between the 1820s and up until the beginning of the 20th century as a large industrial site, because we used to be, I think it was the world's largest train station for a while, and it was it was a big sort of freight transshipping point between the canal and the port at Thames and then the railway network. And a lot of those buildings are preserved, but they were never built to last forever. So there's been a lot of reconstruction work on those buildings, which are mostly in the stables.
There's certainly been concerns about, I don't know whether gentrification is quite the right word, but sort of neatification, of trying to turn it all into neat units which all look the same and all of that, hasn't there?
I used to manage a street market in East London.
Yeah.
And there you've certainly got the G word coming into play. But I think because of the nature of Camden as quite an outward-looking market, and just because of the nature of the site, gentrification isn't really something that we need to worry about. Because it's a post-industrial site, it doesn't lend itself to being turned into neat little boxes.
Right.
Lots of little yards, railway arches and funny spaces that you just, even if you wanted to, you couldn't sort of play Minecraft with it.
The site over the other side of the road, I presume, is going to be a little more ordered because they've sort of knocked it down and started again, haven't they?
Well, yeah, over the other side of the road, you had what was basically the railway, which is still there, and a collection of yards and, strips of land running along the side of the railway and along the side of the canal. There wasn't really much there in terms of physical structures. So in that sense, that's more of a blank canvas.
Other than the market, what would you say is a good reason to come to that part of London?
Other than the market, surely the market's the best reason to come to that part of London. But that being said, we've got London Zoo just up the road, so we do a lot of work.
No, but I mean specifically around there. I mean pubs, restaurants.
We're sort of smack bang in the middle of a very vibrant East African community with some wonderful Ethiopian and Eritrean food that you can get.
Right.
There's a lot of lovely pubs which have resisted turning into bars, and they're sort of dotted all around. Kentish Town is a lovely area that sort of runs straight up to the market, and it's very leafy, and yet you've got quite dense housing next to old terraced roads. It's a lovely place to spend the day.
How do people get stalls on the market? How does it work these days? Can people still just turn up as they used to be able to?
No, they have to apply online first. There's various bits of regulation which make the old-fashioned way of casual trading not so acceptable now. We need to do things like check people's right to work and stuff, which means that we can't just take people on the fly.
Sure.
But a lot of our traders might trade for a few days each week, or they disappear for months at a time and return. We still have a lot of hippies who like to go to India for winter.
Right. What would you say is in the market for someone like me or even my own family? My family are, the youngest is 18 now. They're 18, they're 20, they're 21, they're 25, they're that sort of age. What would you say is in it for us? Because, we're locals. We live on a doorstep. I've lived there for 23 years or whatever it is. What would you say to get me going back up there again?
Obviously, the food offering has changed quite a bit over the years, but there's a lot of really good street food.
Yeah.
We have a lot of events and performances on the market.
Right.
There is a lot of street fashion. I'm on the cusp of 40, and I've been wearing a suit since I was in my late 20s. But we've got some very good tailors and designers on the market.
Is it still a good place for people watching?
It is a fantastic place for people watching. I'd be very hard pressed to find anyone in the world who would look out of place in Camden.
What about the negatives? There have been times when there's been quite a lot of drug dealing around the market. Some people have felt uncomfortable, particularly along the canal and all of that. What's the situation like there?
I remember back in the 90s, that was outside of the tube station. And to be fair, in terms of safety, it's mostly bouquet garni. So if you want to buy some incredibly expensive oregano, there's still that available. But there's a little bit of it about, but there's not a lot of trouble or issues from it. It stays back from the market, but it's still there. That's part and parcel of anywhere busy in London.
And you don't want to take the rock and roll entirely out of Camden Town, do you?
Again, I don't think even if we wanted to, I don't think you could do it. You've still got that thing with Camden, like some other parts of London. It's somewhere people can quite happily spend a day without doing anything in particular, and they feel like it was a day well spent. You still have people starting up new ideas or exploring new things. It's a market in the very ancient, traditional sense of place, somewhere where people come together and experiment and do their own thing.
James O'Noonine, it's been a pleasure talking to you, sir. And is it every single day of the week now, the market, for those who might not have been up there for a while?
Although I have to pop in for a brief time, we're only closed on Christmas Day.
You'll be out on Christmas Day?
I will be in just for a short period. I live around the corner from the market myself.
Right. You should come down our end, down the southern end of Camden Town. It's great down there.
I've heard it's quite rough.
Look, we're the posh end. Get out of it. James.
Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say it's a pleasure talking to you, sir.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. What a nice guy.